Hello, and welcome to another video in Navigating the Windows Environment with a Screen Reader series. Today we're going to focus on the View Controls area of the File Explorer, as well as doing a little bit of filtering and sorting using these features. Before we get too far along, just a quick reminder that though we're going to be using JAWS for Windows as our screen reader today, you can use whatever screen reader you are most comfortable with that works in the Windows environment. All of the processes and commands we're going to use are completely Windows-based and are not dependent on the screen reader that you are using. However, it's important to keep in mind that any feedback or tutor messages that you're getting from your screen reader may be different from what you hear in this video due to any screen reader settings or Windows settings that you have enabled, even if you're using JAWS. So let's go ahead and get started. The View controls are a list of controls that manage the content that's displayed or sorted in the focused folder that's in File Explorer. As you might recall, we set up in a previous video a folder that contains the majority of our documents as our default landing page when we open File Explorer. We also set it up so that the Details view is what we are viewing when we open File Explorer in all of our folders. I'm going to open File Explorer now by pressing Windows key plus the letter E or echo.
Windows E. Amy-Vidp. Items view multi-select list box. Not selected. Archive not checked. 5/18/2026 9:47 a.m. file folder.
It opened in the expected location. In order to get to the View controls, I would press an F6. Just as a note, the View controls is only available when in the Details view. So I want to review how to get the Details view so that you can follow along in this video. First, we're going to press the Alt key to get to the menu bar.
New button collapsed. 1 of 10. To activate, press space bar.
And then we're going to press the right arrow until we hear View.
Sort button collapsed. 8 of view button collapsed. 9 of 10. To activate, press space bar.
Now we're going to press space or enter.
Enter. Extra large icons. 1 of 11. To move through items, press up or down arrow.
And we're going to press down arrow until we hear Details.
Large icons, medium icons, small icons. List 5 of 11. Details checked 6 of 11.
In my case, Details is already checked. I can hit enter here.
Enter. View but leaving menus.
I'm still in the menu bar, even though it left the menu, so I'm going to press escape.
Escape. Items view multi-select list box. Not selected. Archive not checked. 5.
I'm focused back in the content pane now. To get to the View controls, I'm going to press F6 until focus reaches the top of the window that's directly above the content pane. Visually, it's literally above the content pane, and what they look like is they look like column headers, because that's pretty much what they are. And that's how content in File Explorer is sorted. If I press F6,
F6. Name split button collapsed.
I'll hear the name of the first column. In my case, I have 5 columns. The first column is name. If I press right arrow,
Status split button collapsed.
I hear the second column, which is status.
Date modified split button collapsed.
Date modified.
Type split button collapsed.
Type, which would tell me what type it is, file folder, Word file, PowerPoint, whatever.
Size split button collapsed.
Or the size. If I press right arrow again,
Name split button collapsed.
it takes me right back around to the top. If I wanted to sort differently, there are a couple of things I can do. Right now, I'm sorted by name alphabetically. I could sort my content in reverse order by pressing enter here. Let me do that right now.
Enter. Not selected. Archived. Not checked. 1 of 145. Not selected.
I pressed Control. So it said archived 145 of 145. That tells me right away that that folder is at the bottom of the list, where before it was saying it was 1 of 145. Let me confirm that by pressing Home.
Home. Website summer school announcement. Checked. 1 of 145.
This file that was at the bottom is now at the top. I just want to say something that I may have neglected to mention in the previous video. When File Explorer is open, it automatically sorts all of the folders at the top, regardless of the alphabetical name. So file folders are all sorted together, and any other file type is sorted together after that. That's important to know. Also, after I change filtering options, focus automatically goes back to that content pane, and I don't have to force it to go back there because Windows recognizes that I've changed the sort order and I probably want to go back to where I was to check the sort order and continue in my process. I'm going to go ahead and bring that sort order back to what it was before by pressing F6.
F6. Name split button collapsed.
Enter.
Enter. Not selected. Website summer school announcement. Not checked. 1 of 1.
Now Home.
Home. Archived. Checked. 1 of 145.
So I can confirm that it's now resorted alphabetically again. There are other ways to sort content. I could do the same exact thing by sorting by status, by date modified, type, and size. I could reverse sort those by pressing Enter on those items, just like I did on name if I wanted, or I could do something else that I'm going to show you now. We can do something called filter, and that means we can make sure that only items of a specific type or description are shown in the content panel. I'll show you what I mean. First, we're going to navigate to our View Options area, and we're going to take a look at what the filter options look like for each one of the columns. And then we're going to follow through by going through an example of how to filter. So let's go ahead and go to that View Options area using F6.
F6. Name split button collapsed.
Now I'm focused on the Name Split button. To make these filter options show up, I'm going to press the down arrow.
Not selected. 0 and -9. 1 of 5. To move through items, press up or down arrow. 0.
For name, the filters are going to look like filtering by specific letters or numbers in this example as well, that the file begins with or the file folder begins with. So I can choose to filter only by items that begin with a numeral.
Not selected. A and -H. 1 of 5. A.
That begins with A through H.
Not selected. I and -P. 1 of 5. I.
That begins with letters I through P. And there are some other ones as well, but I'm going to press Escape because there's really no point in filtering in this way. First letter navigation can actually do a lot of this for you.
Escape. Leaving menus. Items view multi-select list box. Name split button collapsed.
So I'm going to press my right arrow.
Status split button collapsed.
And down arrow to open the filter options.
Context menu. To navigate, press up or down arrow. C. Not selected. Computing filters. ... 1 of 1. C. Available when online. Not selected. Available when online. 1 of 3. A.
So I can choose items that show that are only available when online.
Not selected. Available on this device. 1 of 3. A.
Only show items that are available on this device.
Not selected. Sync pending. 1 of 3. S.
Or show items whose sync is pending. This might not mean much to you, and it might not even be available to you if you're not looking at an online syncing situation. So this might not be available to you at all. But I just wanted to show you that this is what shows up. So I'm going to press Escape to get out of this context menu, out of this filtering area.
Escape. Leaving menus. Items.
And now I'm going to press right arrow to go to Date. This is probably going to be these last two, Date, Modified, and Type, are probably going to be the ones that you use the most. So I'm going to press the right arrow to go to Date Modified.
Date modified split button collapsed.
And I'm going to press a down arrow.
Not selected a long time ago. 1 of 7. To move through items, press up or down arrow A.
If this were selected, it would only show items that were a long time ago. There are other choices in here, including
not selected earlier this year. 1 of 7. E. Not selected last month. 1 of 7. F. Not selected last week. 1 of 7. Not selected earlier this week. 1 of 7. Not selected yesterday. 1 of 7. Not selected today. 1 of 7. Not selected a long time ago. 1 of 7. A.
So it cycles through between a long time ago and then to today. And then if I keep pressing down, it goes right back to the top. You might have noticed that it also says 1 of 7 for each one of these, and that's just a fluke. So if I were to select one of these, it would only show files that were edited within that time period or modified within that time period. It would only show folders that contained files that were edited or modified in that time period. I'm going to go to today.
Not selected or not selected last week, not selected earlier this week, not selected yesterday, not selected today. 1 of 7. T.
I'm going to check that by pressing space.
Space, check selected.
And then I'm going to press enter.
Leaving menus. Amy-VidP. Items view multi-select list box. Not selected desktop not checked. 7/24/2026 10:48 a.m. file folder. 1 of 2. To move to an item, press the arrow keys. Not selected desktop not checked. 1 of 2. WCBVI outreaches files documents to share checked. 2 of 2. Desktop.
So these are the only folders or areas that have items that were edited today. If I want to clear this filter, I can do an Alt plus a left arrow because that takes me back a folder.
Alt left arrow, not so.
So I'm going to press home to ensure that that happened.
Home, archived, checked, 1 of 145.
And it did because it's showing 1 of 145. I'm going to do one more example for you, and that's pressing an F6 to go up to this view options, and we're going to filter by type. So I'm going to go F6.
F6, name split button collapsed.
Okay, and now I'm going to press my right arrow until I hear type.
Status split button, date modified split button, type split button collapsed.
I'm going to press a down arrow and see what options I have. I want to actually filter only by Microsoft Word files. So I'm going to press a down arrow.
Not selected file folder, 1 of 14. Not selected hike file, 1 of 14. H.
And you'll notice that there are 14 types here, but again, it's also only saying 1 of 14, regardless of which we are focused on, just as a note.
Not selected internet shortcut, not selected Microsoft Excel, not selected Microsoft Power, not selected Microsoft Power, not selected Microsoft Publish, not selected Microsoft Word 97-2003 document, 1 of 14, M.
Now this is the old Microsoft Word file format, but I don't want to sort by the old one, I want to find the new one.
Not selected Microsoft Word document, 1 of 14, M.
And here we go. So I'm going to press a spacebar to select that.
Space, check selected.
And enter.
Leaving menus. Amy-VidP. Items view multi-select list box. Not selected 04 request for services form not checked. Home.
So now only Microsoft Word files are going to show if I use first letter navigation, up or down arrows, or home and end keys to navigate the list.
Accessibility features in PeopleSoft v2 left parent updated 6-14-2021 right parent checked 2 of 45.
And there's only 45 items, so that ensures that this is also definitely filtered. Again, to clear the filter, I can do an Alt plus a left arrow.
Alt left arrow, not selected 04.
Then a home just to confirm.
Home, archived, checked 1 of 145.
And I've confirmed that. One thing I do want to mention is that if I do a filter by a date, let's say that was modified yesterday, and it comes up with folders that were modified yesterday. If I enter that folder, that filter will not apply in that next folder. So you would have to reapply that filter to bring those results down again. So once I enter a folder, everything is visible. So if you need to apply a filter more than once, depending on the folder that is in focus or that you are located in or that is open, that is completely normal, and that's not a problem with Windows or how you've applied your filter. The filter only applies to the folder that you are currently focused in and that is currently open, not any folders that will be opened after that. So that's just a note that's important to make sure that you are aware of. I hope this has been helpful for you. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.